This video goes out to Congresswoman Nancy Mace.
A radical left is calling me an extremist for being a feminist, fighting to protect the rights of women and girls.
Look, this is a weird and bizarre obsession with trans people.
We would just be so much happier in life if us as trans people just came together and murdered a bunch of people.
We are witnessing in real time the fall of the trans activist movement.
Congresswoman Nancy Mace, I hope that one day I do find you in that women's bathroom and I grab your ratty looking hair and drag your face down to the floor while I repeatedly...
Slow down, Buffalo Bill. You're not doing anything to help the cause right now. Don't worry, I'll play that person's full statement a little bit later in the video. It's just too early for it. But it is brutal, trust me. And they put out another one that's regarding JK Rowling, and that one is brutal as well. So believe me, they're coming. Just give me a second to set everything up so you know what's going on and why this person is so upset. But I just want to make the point really quick. If women are saying they feel like trans women in women's spaces are a threat to their safety, and then you make a statement like this and tag the woman that you're trying to threaten, do you think that's going to help or hurt your movement? What's up, everybody? Ty Rivera here, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world. All right, so I'm going to talk about a couple of things in this video. The first one being this particular idiot that I don't know why they thought that this was going to be a good idea, and now Representative Nancy Mace's office has reported them to the Sergeant at Arms. And this is partly the LGBT community's fault as well as the allies. So that's the first people I want to hold responsible for this stupidity right here. Because if you all hadn't queened these people into thinking that they were going to be able to get their way by force and let them believe that a trans woman or a trans person is the same, because it gets so murky now. Each time I make a video like this, I get a little more confused on what exactly my wording should be, because I wouldn't under any circumstances call this person a woman. I wouldn't call them a trans woman. But for some reason, society wants us all to accept this as being a woman and say that a person like this should have access to female spaces. So there has been a really heavy pushback from women, and more specifically women that are in politics, that don't want to accept any of it anymore. Where it used to be a little more open as far as, yeah, we understand there are certain trans people that are dealing with gender dysphoria, so we make certain accommodations for them. Now, because of these kinds of people, suddenly everybody seems like a threat, and you don't know who's good and who's bad, and you don't know if somebody is going to try to catch up with you in a women's bathroom, which should not ever be an option. And for those of you that don't know why this hate is being directed at Representative Nancy Mace, what happened is there is the first ever transgender person to be elected to Congress coming in, and her name is Sarah Mcbride. Sarah Mcbride is a transgender woman out of the state of Delaware. I wasn't familiar with Sarah Mcbride before this. Thank God I did a little research. Now, some of you will get mad because I use she, her pronouns in this situation. But one thing you have to understand is in certain instances, I have to watch the way that I talk because of YouTube. If I want you guys to hear what I'm going to say, then it doesn't help if this video gets suppressed or if it gets completely taken down. So please don't come down on me for the way that I'm talking. The last thing I need is you guys getting mad at me when I really do have the best intentions. So please forgive me. So this particular person, Sarah Mcbride, is the first ever trans person to be elected to Congress. So before she comes in, Nancy Mace, who is a representative from South Carolina, says that she wants to change the rules to the Capitol as far as the women's bathrooms go, and you have to go by biological sex to access the women's bathrooms in the Capitol. So she introduced that measure, right? And then she said, so that they might not have to vote on it, that the speaker might be able to slip it into the House rules, and then they wouldn't have to vote on it. It just would be in the updated rules. And the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, what he did was...
A man is a man, and a woman is a woman, and a man cannot become a woman. That said, I also believe, that's what Scripture teaches, what I just said, but I also believe that we treat everybody with dignity. And so we can do and believe all those things at the same time. And I wanted to make that clear for everybody because there's lots of questions. But that's where I stand. I've stood there my whole life, and those are facts.
And so, of course, the trans activists online are up in arms about this. Enter this person. Venus Penis is or was their name on Instagram before they ended up catching so much heat. Now they've changed it to Venus Andromeda, I believe. But I was unable to find them on a search. I'm sure they went underground like every rat does when they realize that they've gone too far and people are actually paying attention. And like I said, that's the first thing I want to talk about because it really has been the left enabling these people and empowering these people and making these people think that they can talk to and threaten people any way that they want to, and there's never going to be a consequence to it because they're from a marginalized community. And that's just not the way it works for any of us. We cannot threaten people. And I'll go ahead and play the full video for you guys just so you guys can hear it. It's a short one, but there's one where they go after JK Rowling as well. And I'll end up playing both of them because these people are truly lost and they are getting to the point or have gotten to the point where they're making the entire LGBTQ community look bad. They're making people completely unsympathetic, and it really is getting to a point where there's almost no way to continue to stand behind the community when the community will continue to encourage people like this. And I feel like if the community really wanted to stand up to it, they would be online making it very clear we do not stand behind this kind of person. Instead, the community is radio silent right now because they still want to have Sarah Mcbride's back, which after we play this video, I'll tell you why I don't have Sarah Mcbride's back on any level at all. But at the same time, I think she and Nancy Mace are two sides of the same coin. So I don't have Nancy Mace's back either. And don't get mad at me yet. Let me finish what I'm going to say and then you can be mad at me because I really do have very sound and logical points that don't come from an activist perspective on either side.
This video goes out to Congresswoman Nancy Mace. Congresswoman Nancy Mace, I hope that one day I do find you in that women's bathroom and I grab your ratty looking fucking hair and drag your face down to the floor while I repeatedly bash it in until the blood's everywhere and you're dead. Thank you. I hope that Nancy Mace receives this message well. Kisses.
While that may sound scary and intimidating or whatever, this person might want to watch their back trying to get in there with Nancy Mace because Nancy Mace is a former Waffle House waitress. And I don't know if you know this, but Waffle House waitresses are built a little different. All I'm saying is Nancy Mace has a little bit of that dog in her. So you can try to tangle with her if you want to, but I would say even though she looks to be a very slight woman, she might end up getting you. She might end up getting you. So mind yourself around Nancy Mace. But like I already said, in what world would you think that that's going to get the desired result and make people think that you or other trans people are not a threat to women in women's spaces? When you're saying that you would brutally assault somebody in a women's bathroom when the debate that's raging is about women's bathrooms, how does that make any sense to you at all? And to be 100% honest, Buffalo Bill over here is a walking red flag even when he's nowhere near a women's bathroom. And at a point, you do have to stop thinking about just what your fantasies are, however sick they may be, and really think about how you're either helping or hurting the cause that you claim to represent or care about. Because that's something I sometimes have to do because my words could actually end up hurting the cause that I'm supporting. So instead of saying just whatever craziness pops in my head, sometimes I'll run it through a couple filters. And not many because I'm not a very filtered person. But at the same time, I'm smart enough to know that there's a difference between the emotional me and the logical me. And sometimes it's the logical me that needs to speak so that we can actually find some compromise and get something getting done. But this person is not about that. And I would like to say that they're the minority in the trans activist movement. But when it comes to trans activists, not actual trans people, I always have to be very clear about that. But when it comes to the trans activists, this person is not at all an outlier in their thinking. Maybe they're one of the few that's actually being vocal about it right now, but they're not at all an outlier. So while I would like to say, ladies, you don't have to worry about it. This person is definitely not representative of what's going on with the trans activist movement. When it comes to the trans activist movement, this person is a little more extreme, but definitely does express the kind of views that it is a lot of the trans activists do have. A lot of them are very unhinged like this. And so he's also mad at JK Rowling because JK Rowling has come out recently and been very firm about a statement John Oliver made regarding trans women in sports where he downplayed it.
There are vanishingly few trans girls competing in high schools anywhere. Even if there were more, trans kids, like all kids, vary in athletic ability, and there is no evidence they pose any threat to safety or fairness. It is very weird for you to be so focused on this subject. And finally, if you genuinely want to address the biggest concern for most girls who play high school sports, you'd be less worried about this and more about the creepy assistant volleyball coach who keeps liking their posts on Instagram.
And that's what I think really has gotten us to this point when it comes to women being so unwilling to bend when it comes to the trans movement, is that at every turn, no matter how right women are, the trans rights activists and their allies like John Oliver will continue to poo-poo them and make it seem like they don't have a valid point and really do try to gaslight them into believing that reality is not reality. And that's where everybody is starting to put their foot down with the trans community and the trans rights activists, because everybody's saying, no, we're not seeing things the wrong way. You're seeing things the wrong way. And you're doing it intentionally because of your own motives. And at some point, the majority is going to get tired of the minority trying to run all of us. And it's been this way for several years. So when you continue to poke the bear and continue to poke the bear, and eventually you get the bear's attention, don't get upset when you realize that the bear is still the bear and you really are the minority that you're constantly playing victim over. It's just everybody's been trying to be polite, trying to be understanding, trying to be tolerant. And I really can say that as a gay man that functions in society and has had a lot of trans friends throughout my life, in the last 10 years or so, the general public has tried to be very understanding with the trans community. But when we get to a situation where you all have literally started trying to tell women that their opinions completely don't matter, eventually society in general is going to be like, we have their backs, not yours. So you go find a spot for yourself, but women's spaces are not for you. And so let me play this video that he made about JK Rowling just to show you the level of unhinged that we're dealing with right now. Before we go any further, I'm just going to ask that you like, comment, and subscribe. We're on our way to 100,000 followers, so we're making good progress, so help me out.
And why is JK Rowling still alive? We should be focusing our efforts and our resources not on assassinating Trump, but instead on assassinating JK Rowling. That fucking wench needs to die. She needs to burn on the stake and die. I condone murder. I condone it. I think that we need to hold our politicians accountable by murdering them. And I think we need to hold JK Rowling accountable by murdering her too. And I'm like so very serious about this. I'm so passionately serious about this. I think that we should just all come together and murder everyone. I think, like things would be better, like we would just be so much happier in life if us as trans people just came together and murdered a bunch of people. Like, I think that really would like solve all of our problems.
Okay, I don't know where a person like this would think that this is a smart thing to not only say, but post online. I don't know why it is people like this have been supported for so long, and this person is from Portland, which makes perfect sense because Portland, Seattle, some of those cities really do just need to start to let these people know that they are not going to run their cities anymore. There's a person that identifies as trans, and there is video of this person all over Seattle walking around nude, even with kids around. Just walks around nude all day, every day. And the reason nobody tells them anything is because they identify as trans. There was the situation when they started Chaz and Chop in Seattle. And I say this because Seattle and Portland are definitely two cities that are very similar in the amount that they put up with this social justice warrior, PC, almost trying to make it some kind of utopia that nobody would want to live in except for people like this. And people like this just need to be completely shut down, especially from within the LGBTQ community. That's why I will 100% say I don't support anything like this person's thinking. Not even a little bit. This is not something I would ever pretend to condone, stand up for, or even understand. In a lot of cases, I can play devil's advocate and I can be like, well, maybe they're just dealing with... No, there is no room for this at all in what it is we're trying to accomplish. And as a society, as a country, we need to really band together and put out that fire. But the reason that I was saying I can't completely agree with Nancy Mace is because even though the pendulum has swung the other way, and there is that instinct to just go with it, but at the same time, I do think that we do need to show some sort of sympathy and empathy to the trans people that aren't at all involved with the trans movement and aren't at all trying to push any of this stuff. And if we're smart about it, I really feel like we can shake out all the pervs and weirdos and get that to be completely immobilized and a non-issue. That's what's been serving as the voice of the LGBTQ community. And I do feel like this Sarah Mcbride is a bit of a Trojan horse. I'm going to be honest about that. She was the HRC's press secretary.
I'm Sarah Mcbride, HRC's National Press Secretary.
Which I am not at all a fan of the HRC. I've talked about that before. That's a human rights campaign supposedly looking out for LGBT people, does nothing but cause us problems and throw events for themselves so that they can rub shoulders with celebrities and spend a bunch of money that they shouldn't spend. That's the way I feel about the HRC. And she was their national press secretary. So of course she has an agenda as well. So when it comes to Sarah Mcbride, the first trans person to ever serve in Congress, I feel like the sooner that she can be voted out of there, the better off everybody is going to be. It's too bad that she ended up getting voted in, because even if you're trying to be open-minded, an LGBT person that has worked with the HRC or GLAAD or any of those organizations, unless they have completely denounced them at this point and no longer support any of their ideology, they're exactly what we do not need. I agree, there is a need for representation when it comes to LGBTQ, excuse me, not the Q, when it comes to LGB, even the T, because there are very level-headed trans people that I think could be helpful in a society that is inclusive of everybody. And when I say inclusive, understand, I do not mean any of the PC, you gotta mind yourself and watch what you say and tiptoe around people's feelings and change your definitions of everything. And when it comes to the bathrooms, I get it 100%. If that's gonna have to be a thing where people do just have to go to the bathrooms that align with their biological sex for the most part, because the place that is going to get sticky is, a lot of times I use Buck Angel as an example, but I could use several trans men as examples that you would never know are born female. So if you allow them into the women's bathroom, that's going to allow the creeps to not even have to get dressed up anymore. They're just going to be able to say, I'm a trans man, and then they come in. And while you would like to think that somebody's going to be able to enforce or check IDs or whatever it is you think people are going to do, who's going to take those jobs? I mean, I guess we could tell Donald Trump and the new borders are coming in not so fast with those Mexicans. We might have a job for them. We might be able to put them on the door of every bathroom and check IDs and be basically bathroom bouncers. But that's where the real threat will come in, if you ask me, is once you start forcing the trans men who are born female, so women that look like men, to go into the women's bathroom, then pervs aren't even gonna have to get dressed up. They'll just be like, I'm a trans man. And I would like to say that wouldn't happen, but we've all seen the way every system gets abused. So I really do feel like it should be based on what it is you truly do present as and whether or not you're behaving like a creep. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily the best way to go at it. That's just the only solution that I can come up with that seems to make any real sense, because even though I joke about it, who is going to enforce that? Because as it stands, there are a lot of trans men using the men's bathroom every day and none of us know. Just like for years, there have been trans women using the women's bathroom and nobody ever knew because they weren't in there to do anything nefarious. They weren't behaving in a way that would raise any flags. They truly were using the bathrooms for what they were to be used for. And it was never an issue. And I still see a lot of women saying in the comments in my post and in a lot of things I see that they don't have a problem with somebody that's passable and not raising any flags using the bathroom because they don't know and it's not their business and they don't care. And that's part of why I think that Nancy Mace is grandstanding and just trying to make this her thing to grab some headlines and to really stamp herself as this pro-woman, I'm that girl type of branding, so that she ensures that she will continue to have a spot because women will be loyal to her if they feel like she's the one that's been standing up for us all along. But in this instance, I don't feel like she really is standing up for women by trying to enforce this in the Capitol, because there is absolutely no danger to her or anybody else in the Capitol when it comes to one person that's been elected out of 435 and then possibly using a women's bathroom. And so where I think Nancy Mace is in danger of faltering a little bit is she's being a little too heartless in her approach. So I understand having to be firm, but at the same time, especially if you're an actual member of Congress, I think that sometimes you do have to be a bit more diplomatic in your approach, and you do have to remember that there are certain people that may be negatively affected by this that shouldn't necessarily be. And referring to all trans people as playing pretend and doing dress up, I don't think that that's going to be a winning strategy either. And this does not come from my own personal feelings about trans people or the fact that I've had trans friends for so long. This just comes from a place of anytime that you go too far and you really do start to come off as possibly being discriminatory or outright bullying, the general public will eventually have an adverse reaction to that, just like they did with the trans community. Because like I said, for a while there, the majority of people were being very supportive and trying to be as understanding as they could to trans people. And then trans people became bullies. And then once that started happening, it took them a couple of years, but once that started happening, that's when the pendulum swung the other way. And now even people that used to support the trans community no longer support because of the way that they went at it and the way that they started dehumanizing people, especially biological women. And so that's what I worry about for women when it comes to people that go a little too hard, is that even though a lot of what you're saying is right, when you have people getting too extreme and maybe coming off as a little bit too hardline and a little bit too hateful, that's going to start to lose some of the support that you're going to need in order to get the different things that you need passed. And this is something I would say to any group at all. So don't hit me with, you just want women to compromise and do what men want. No, I want everybody to compromise, because compromise is the only place that we get anywhere. You can listen to the dummies that have been trying to run everything for the last 10 years on both sides, because there's dummies on both sides that really have been trying trying their best to keep us all arguing because they can't get it together. That's on the right, that's on the left. There are dummies on both sides that are super loud and pretend to speak for all of us when most of us sane people know that the only way to get anything done is actually finding the compromise. And yes, sometimes that's men that need to compromise, sometimes it's women that need to compromise, sometimes it's trans people that need to compromise, sometimes it's gay people that need to compromise, sometimes it's black people that need to compromise, sometimes it's white people that need to compromise, sometimes it's Latinos that need to compromise, sometimes it's Republicans that need to compromise, sometimes it's Democrats that need to compromise. But yes, I hate to break it to everybody, but at different points, in order for us to live in this country and coexist, it is going to take some compromise from all sides and all peoples. And do I think that Sarah Mcbride, if she wasn't being some sort of activist, even though she claims in her words to not be about making history, but instead to be about making change, I think she is there to make history, and I think that she is there to change things in a way that we don't need them. But what I'm saying as far as Nancy Mace goes is it might be smarter to just not fight the battle in order to win the war, because it's a battle that I guess now that she's thrown the gauntlet down does have to play out to a certain degree, but I don't think it's worth what it might end up costing the American public, in that once you start off on that petty note, because the Democrats are already pushing back against it, now you have a situation where Democrats and Republicans have one more thing to fight about, and we as the American public are the ones that are going to pay for that. And she's already receiving some pushback from other House Republicans, and I think this kind of sums it up right here. Other House Republicans have pushed back, arguing members instead should focus on pressing policy issues before the end of the term. Quote, "I'm not getting involved in a bathroom debate. It's not what I came to Congress for," said Representative Tom Cole, Republican, Oklahoma. "We ought to be doing disaster relief and appropriation bills." And that's what I was getting at when I said that I don't think that Nancy Mace is really thinking this through in the way that she's making herself look petty. And I know that the bathroom situation is pressing for the everyday woman, but when we're talking about in the Capitol specifically, Nancy Mace nor anybody else is really in danger from this person, Sarah Mcbride, using a bathroom, even if she uses a women's bathroom. But if you want to say that that's the kind of legislation that we need to work on for the general public, I would start working on that first instead of having an argument in a place where everybody's safe. So instead of making it a big deal in the Capitol where there's really no threat to anybody and it would just be purely symbolic, instead work on expanding these kinds of measures like what happened in Ohio and seeing how we can help the different states to enforce the kind of laws that we're going to need to protect the everyday woman. Because the women in Congress are not in any danger from this person, Sarah Mcbride, even though because of her political beliefs and her connection with the HRC and basically what comes down to the LGBTQ activist community, she is definitely, in my opinion, a threat to the American way of living and what it is a lot of us have expressed that we want moving forward in this country. And I do think it's very dismissive when trans people like Sarah Mcbride try to make it seem like it's some sort of weird and bizarre obsession that Republicans and the general public have with trans people.
Look, this is a weird and bizarre obsession with trans people on the part of the Republican Party.
When the trans activists have literally thrust these people into having to be at the fore of everything. You're the ones that made it that way, and now that we've all realized what it is we will and won't put up with and are putting down boundaries, now you make it seem like a weird obsession. No, it's kind of you guys that have a weird obsession with the rest of us, where you really want to force us to live a particular way, speak a particular way, and even think a particular way. We're not even allowed to have our own thoughts as far as the trans activists go. And I think it's very dismissive to women because when it comes down to it, most recently, it has been about trans women in women's sports. It has been about trans women in women's locker rooms. It has been about trans women in women's prisons. It has been so targeted towards women that you really really are trivializing the concerns that are being voiced by everyday women. These aren't extreme activists that are expressing these concerns right now. This is the everyday mother, the everyday sister. This isn't an activist thing. This definitely is the American public telling you that we are not for this. You all have gone too far. So to try to just dismiss it as this weird and bizarre obsession with trans people, no, what's your guys' weird and bizarre obsession with women and not allowing them to have their own spaces, no matter how accommodating they have been or were with the trans community? And so you have to understand, people are going to push back, and that's what's happening online right now, is people really aren't having it. If you look at the reactions on X, which X isn't always the best example of what's going on in society, but at the same time, X really used to be on the opposite side, and they were in support on that platform of trans people. Well, now there's a lot of people just saying, no, trans women are men, or things like that, which, you know, I understand what everybody's saying. I don't necessarily agree with everything, because I think in some cases, actual trans people are being punished for what it is that the trans activists have done, and the transgenders and the non-binary. But at the same time, I can understand how women in particular have had enough of being put in these compromising situations and constantly being expected to take a back seat to the trans rights movement. Because as men, we just don't deal with it the same, you know? You know, like one person put something that's true. I guarantee you would scream for help and bloody if a trans man walked into a women's bathroom, you bigot. Which I agree with everything he said there, except for the you bigot part. I don't think, because that was in response to Nancy Mace's post that she had made about the bathrooms. Kelly Cadigan, who's a trans influencer, I guess you could say, but she tends to lean right. She was like, if HRT was a requirement to be trans, none of these bathroom bills would be supported right now. But no, the trans community had to tell us we're evil bigots for believing in trans medicalism. So now we're all effed. Congratulations to the woke mob. You really made a difference. And she is right about that. That's what I'm saying. Like, there was gatekeeping in place before, and now it's just turned into this free-for-all, and that's why everybody's getting punished now. This person put, if you pass, no one cares. The ones that don't pass are aggressive as hell because it is obvious they are not who they pretend to be. You complaining about it is the equivalent of a homosexual crime bigotry. No one knows unless you make it an issue. Throw it in people's faces, make an ass out of yourself. You know, the usual stuff the rainbow community gets up to. Which is true. That's the reason I tell every trans person I know that's passable just not to make this your fight and continue to go in the bathroom you would usually go into and just not make this a thing for you. But here's one of the ones that has to go ahead and throw it in, even though they know that this is going to be beneficial to everybody else. This is in response to Kelly Cadigan, who is the trans woman that, like I said, leans right, but she's wishy-washy. I don't dislike her, but at the same time, I don't think she's got strong enough convictions to really matter in any way. But I did see her comment, and I wanted to see what people were responding to her. Somebody put, I have told you 1,000 times, they will not stop you unless they actively know you from being online. But they will stop those of us who don't pass. You need to stand up for those who don't. No, you need to work harder at passing, or you need to hang it up and just accept that you're a man. Those are the two choices. So get mad if you want to. Let me know what you think down below in the comments. If you want to see a video of more of my views and maybe something you'll agree with, even if you didn't at the end of this one. I don't know how anybody's going to feel about this, but if you want to see another video from me, check out the one on your screen. Thank you for watching. As always, this has been Ty Rivera, the absolute best LGBTQ comedian in the world.
They bought into his bullshit.